Welcome so much to FounderMade. I have been very excited for this panel. I think a lot of other people have too. I'm not being biased here. The conversation about influencers has been dominating almost every beauty conversation I've been having. But before we get into it, let's meet the panel. We have Manuel to my left. We all know him as the creative director of America's Next Top Model, but also the founder of Manuel Beauty. We have Huda Kattan. She turned a blog into $1 billion beauty brand, and it's the fastest beauty brand in history. She's the founder and CEO of Huda Beauty. And last but certainly not least, Leandra Cohen, who took her blog, Man Repeller, and made it into, honestly, like a media empire with just so funny and great to read. So thank you, everyone, for coming. So like I was saying, whenever I speak to brands or publicists, this conversation about influencers comes up, and people kind of want to know the rules, but I don't know if there are any rules right now. They keep on changing. The whole industry is changing with regard to influencers. So I'm hoping you guys can clear up some things. So first, I'd like to know, in short, what does your audience, your digital audience, come to you for? Let's go down the row.
Okay.
Start with Jay.
For me, and I think what's so incredible about this panel today is that we all have, I think, very different platforms, and people come to us for different things. For me, and just kind of how I ended up in this position, I kind of came the long way around. I was kind of involved in the industry well before there was social media. I'm the old one at the table, really. So kind of for me, I think when I engage on social media, and, for instance, companies that I do work with who are influencer types, me personally, I feel like what I'm trying to always balance and juggle is kind of truth and authenticity, and having a dialogue that's kind of a whole concept and not specifically right just towards beauty. So that would be kind of my platform and kind of what they come to me for.
Great. Huda?
Yeah, I feel like for my platform, I definitely kind of entered into to social media kind of at the early days. When I started my blog, and I'm not the legend that Leandra is with blogging, but actually like idolize her. but what I basically did was I kind of used I got I told them not to put me next to her. Do you guys see her waist?
She just had twins too, by the way.
Can we give her a round of applause for that?
Breastfeeding.
So I think we kind of came in a little bit later, I came in a little bit earlier with social media. And what really stuck out for me was Instagram. I loved Instagram when it was out. I just thought it was a really cool platform to kind of like consistently share different things. And when it first came out, I was like, oh my gosh, like we need added stress for more social media ways to share things. But I did fall in love with it as well. And it's obviously evolved, and I think all social media platforms evolve. That's what they do. They start out a certain way, and then they kind of become something else. And it's become really a huge catalyst for the beauty industry. And I think that's really incredible. So, what we've kind of come to do with it is, we just share all kinds of beauty, regardless of what it is. And I think that's really what we kind of stand for, like just all over, just beauty, and also, again, being authentic and honest, like Jay was talking about.
And Leandra, what does your audience come to, you as an individual for, or Man Repeller? You can speak to either one.
I think if you are lucky enough to develop an audience, the reason that audience is generated is because of something that is so natural to who you are, that comes really easy for you, that you probably take for granted and don't recognize doesn't come easy for everyone else. So in my experience, that currency has sort of been a very honest and fairly humorous take on fashion, partially because I have a sense of humor, and so I always felt that it was funny and always wanted there to be a little bit more sense of humor injected in high fashion. But even beyond that, almost everything that I say and do and think sort of has this psychological and anthropological undertone. I'm so curious about what motivates humanity, and I like to see that through the lens of fashion, because style is so, it's such an interesting marker of identity, and it really, really allows you to see, number one, yourself, and also the people around you, and so much of what is projected. And so I would say, for a combination of or I would hope that people come to me because it is a place where you can very comfortably nestle your interests in politics and fashion and making jokes and not
Always a sense
feel
of
bad
humor.
about all of those things. It's like a buffet. It's
Yeah.
like an intellectual buffet.
I'll take that. So there's so much talk right now about social media conversion. I'm sure a lot of people here are wondering what is the true ROI of having an engaged social following. People think it's a bit of a golden ticket, but what in your eyes is the value of having an engaged social following?
Well, I think it's the obvious is that there is a platform where you can really reach anybody. I mean, that's the main goal of that. I mean, if you think about even 10 years ago, if you were a makeup artist or a brand, or any brand really, trying to create that reach and your return on investment, your investment would be much kind of bigger and it would be harder to get that return. So I think now with social media, if you engage in the right way and you have that audience, there's the opportunity to just, reach more people and not, again, in the old days, we'd have to kind of do a lot more work. You had to beat the streets. You had to find other ways to be out there, whether it be, on television, radio, or other platforms, in the magazines, in print. And that's how you kind of built more of a following and kind of made your way into the world. But even that way, as we were talking kind of backstage, and I won't go into it, there were catch-22s all over the place. They were like, oh, you want to go here? Well, you've never done that before. How do you get your foot in the door?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I think is so cool, just to add to Jay's point, which I think is wonderful, is that you can create movements now, which is so cool. So because before, back in the day, especially for like people who are just people and want to start things and they don't necessarily have access to different things, whether it's financial, whether it's people, whether it's whatever resources it is, and now as individuals, we have an opportunity to create movements, which is really, really cool. You could just have a certain passion, a certain belief, and just feel like, you believe it so hard, like in your soul, that you can actually say it, and you'll be shocked at how many people also agree with you. Like, so many people agree with you, and they'll feel like passionate about that, as well. And what I always say is, like, you have an opportunity now as individuals to, like, embed your passion, whether it's in a product, whether it's in a photo, whatever it is. But you have an opportunity to embed your passion in something and create movements, which I think is just so powerful. And, it really is the age of the influencer, and there's just so much I think, that happen as a result of that.
Yeah,
Well, and I think to your point, and this is true for you certainly, it may not be true for Man Repeller, you also have the power with such a large audience to genuinely change the way in which beauty is consumed, what people think when they see what's beautiful. I think that you've really been a pioneer in changing a woman's perception of what makes her beautiful.
I'm blushing, but you can't tell.
That's definitely a high compliment.
So wait, I have one more thing to
Yes.
say. In my case, because we're sort of in the business of selling ideas as opposed to actual product, the real value and return on investment in creating a large audience has really been the community development and building these new cohorts of friends that don't necessarily know each other but really intimately know each other. And that's definitely been one of the most rewarding experiences of running Man Repeller.
Did you think that was going to happen as you were creating Man Repeller?
When I launched Man
launching
Repeller and recognized that I was building something that was hopefully, or that is going to outlive me and last for a long time, I very frequently referred back to the way in which TV shows like Sex and the City and Friends made me feel. And for whatever reason, even though I didn't actually know these characters and they were all fictitious, I felt very much like I was a part of their lives, and like everyone else who felt like those shows resonated for them were very much a part of my lives. They sort of like developed these communities around them, and I go back to that all the time, where I always wanted the readers of Man Repeller to feel like they're logging on and they don't know what they're going to see and what they're going to read, but they know it's coming from a source that they really value and trust and want to be a part of. And because other people are interested in that too, they're making friends.
That's really interesting. Tell me about some examples that you guys have seen where product and your platforms have really come together.
Well, for us, it was really strong with our Faux Filter Foundation because we had been working on it for a while, and we actually put a picture of my face, like half with the foundation on, half without, and we put it on our Instagram. We were like, guys, what should we name this foundation? Because everybody had known we were working on it for a while. And everybody was like, it looks like a filter, it looks like a filter, and everybody just kept saying filter, filter, filter. Gosh, you cannot say that 5 times fast. And so we basically, we took the filter, and then my team just kind of added the word faux to it, and it just became, faux filter. And since then, a lot of foundations have, called filter, and I think it's a genius name. It came from the community, and I think that even through the process, thinking about the names for the foundation and the way that you really want to communicate it, kind of working with the community has been really strong for us.
Leandra, I know you don't work with, you're not creating a product, but you certainly, you guys have done partnerships and everything. Was there one that really came together well, and if so, why?
The most successful off-site activations that we have run have, for the majority of cases, been in the context of event. So we ran a hotel this past April, and we took over the Freehand Hotel in Flatiron and blocked off 150 rooms and invited the community to come and stay there. And we also took over the gift shop and have been running the gift shop for the last 3 months. It's still open until the end of the month if anyone wants to go get a hat. That worked really well because it brought the community to life on the one hand, and in terms of actual product, what we have found is that, this is really my own experience and a thesis that I'm working through and trying to prove correct, or am in the process of proving correct, which is that when you experience such a visceral reaction to something that you read online, it's such an emotional roller coaster. First you're laughing, then you're crying, then you're kind of angry, then you're excited, then you're inside of a conversation with all of these very compassionate and thoughtful people who don't necessarily agree with you, but who are very respectful about their opinions. You switch browsers and you're like, wait, what just happened to all of that emotional resonance and that big conversation and that big feeling I was just part of? Where did it go? And so what we're finding is that by giving people tangible product like hats and barrettes and mugs with boobs on them, they get to feel like they're part of it, and after the browser experience is over, it continues.
It's nice. You keep on going back to this community. It's not about look at me, Leandra, and this funny post.
Yeah.
It's really about creating a community that's exists without you as well.
Yes, all bets are off on my personal Instagram. I have a catalog of selfies. But
What's interesting, and maybe I'll get into a little bit of our conversation. You were just talking about activation, how you felt watching Sex and the City and Friends and all of that. And I think that all goes back to, I think one thing that everybody could even take away here, which is, and we can discuss this whole little 360 of how the influencer was even born. It's kind of a little bit of an unpopular topic.
Say it.
Yeah, most people don't want to talk about this, and when you've got publishers in the room, you don't want to say this. But big money came into the beauty industry, as we know. And in magazines, we saw all the beauty advertising up front in the magazine. And then obviously the editorials started skewing towards the advertising. And the consumer realized, they're saying, oh, hey, there's money behind this helping me make my decision. And with that, the influencers and the bloggers, even in the early stages of social media, they started saying, look, here's this mascara, and here's this mascara. This mascara really is that much better. And that power, that truth and authenticity was so powerful. And it's evolved, and as Huda was just saying, it's constantly evolving. It's evolved to where we are today. But we've kind of come 360 because we're a little bit at a tipping point. Because right now, people are talking about it on social. There are articles written about it. People are starting to say, ooh, these influencers, who's paying them today? This week they're with this big brand. Last week they were with this brand. Where is the truth and authenticity here? So we stray away from that feeling of community, trust, authenticity. So I kind of feel like the next stage of, and really the evolution of the influencer, the next kind of wave of influencers, really need to kind of hunker down and get back to that place of truth, authenticity, and really you can work with third-party companies. I mean, I've had the opportunity to do an activation with House Party, which has now been acquired by Ripple Street, if you guys are familiar with the company. And what they do is they allow you to put your product out there. You do these parties. They're not paid. You're not paying anyone, and it allows them to create content that's authentic. They put it out on their social platforms. That's actually their only requirement. And the difference is people consuming that content are getting honest opinions from these influencers. So I feel like we're starting to have the dialogue of where we're going, so we don't repeat what happened kind of in the publishing world and the influencing world.
I think that what you're saying would happen in the publishing world, where people started to feel like, okay, why is this mascara here? Why does this brand get one page? This is happening in the influencer world. Like, how is the whole hashtag ad thing impacting that?
Well, obviously,
the brands have if something's a partnership.
Yes, if you disclose, you're supposed to disclose if it's a partnership. But people are getting around that now, and I'm saying influencers, because for instance, let's say a celebrity brand right now, one of them is out there saying, oh, if you create an Insta story, whichever one I choose the best, I'm going to put it in my Instagram story. And then they use that content, and they don't put hashtag ad. The difference is now people are chasing the idea of fame and potentially gaining an endorsement. So again, we're skewing the truth.
They're leading with that. Like, if that's the intention, it's not going to be true to their audience.
Exactly. And I think, and one of the things I've always admired about your conversations that you've had on your social platform is you've always just said, like, hashtag real talk. Let's talk. Like, let's be real. And what we're seeing right now is this wave of people who are chasing fame and the idea of becoming an influencer as opposed to following the truth and what their passion is.
Any thoughts?
Don't give me a mic.
I agree to a lot of the points that Jay was saying, and I think it's a really important conversation that we should have, because I think a lot of people, and I just had this conversation yesterday with a nurse because I'm sick, and I was talking to her and I was like, I feel like nobody wants to be a doctor anymore. Everybody wants to be an influencer,
right.
Which it's great. I mean, it is a fun thing to do, but also I think that people don't understand the responsibility they have, and the fact that you do gain a following because you should have trust, and you should really, that's a responsibility. It's a huge responsibility, and I think the more that people can understand that, appreciate that, and also respect their community, the better they will have in anything long term. For us, we refused a lot of paid posts, and it was hard for a long time. But I think ultimately it ended up resulting in something that was more long term.
Okay. So you were doing fewer.
Yeah, we didn't do that many at all. Okay. Yeah, we didn't do that many at all. And actually, I talked about it in a recent magazine article where somebody had actually asked us to do paid posts. They were willing to pay almost $200,000. It's a lot of money. I was like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. I could buy a car. I could do so many things with it. I was like, oh my gosh, I could do so many things. I was thinking all the things in my head. And then, one of my team members was like, okay, we have to do this as hashtag ad. And I was like, okay, great, hashtag ad. And I was like, ooh, wait, I'm doing an ad. I was like, I love the product, but I don't know if that's what my platform is for. And I think a lot of influencers, they support their family, they support themselves. So you just kind of have to figure out, like, what is your purpose? I don't think that's my purpose.
What if a brand has, a lot of upstart brands, like they don't have $200,000, they want $20,000 to do one of these paid posts. Is there a way that they could work with influencers that, maybe you have an example from your own history that felt, that was effective, because this kind of $20,000, $200,000 post thing doesn't really have that much longevity if you're not a huge brand.
I think, again, going back to companies, I mentioned House Party. I know that Ripple Street had acquired them, and Chatterbox. There are companies like that where really, there is a cost involved, but it's not nearly the same thing as a single paid post. So your ROI is going to be a lot higher. So you're basically, you're giving out samples, whether it's product or whatever. Even Dove is using House Party right now. They're doing all these great house parties, but you're sending out product and you're getting authentic, genuine, truthful answers and content that is uncurated, so people believe it more, and then you get to use that content yourself. So you're going to get a larger return on your investment.
I don't like assuming that multiple paid partnerships are synonymous with inauthenticity. I think there are very, very honest ways to work with multiple brands over the course of a very short stretch or a very long stretch, if you are very, very honest about those partnerships, and if you are in a privileged enough position where you're capable of saying no. meaning you can work with the brands that truly do resonate. It's a win-win for everyone because you really like the brand and they're paying you. And say no to the ones that just kind of don't work for you. To that point, because we're talking so much about authenticity and being honest and how you work with people and how you don't, when you think about the evolution of the influencer, the sort of analogy that always comes to my mind is, are we reliving the era of the personal style star? Or the personal, or the, what is that damn, those people who were on shows like The Hills, a reality star. Are we reliving that era of the reality star? Because it started as something that kind of just happened and came out of nowhere, and the media was like, what is this? Why are these people now famous? Like, they think they're actors and they're not. What's going on? But slowly, as younger men and women started to develop their own opinions and absorb ideas of where they wanted to go from a career perspective, they were like, I want to be a reality television star too. And so that's happening where influencers are concerned. And so when we're talking about responsibility and what people at the top of this totem pole need to be espousing, a big piece of that is responsibility to recognize that you're not just in it for the free stuff or the money, right? Because that's what's going to weed out the people who are genuinely interested and curious about sharing and feel like they have a point of view and a perspective that not just deserves but like requires an audience, and how that's going to impact the brands that they work with. And invariably, if the right people, or I shouldn't say right, but if invariably you are going to want to support and promote brands that you feel connected to, whether or not there's a pay stub attached.
Okay. So talking about brands, collaborating with you guys, I hear a lot of brands say, oh, we want to collaborate with this influencer. We want to do something with them. But I feel like if I were in your shoes, it would be like, okay, what does that mean? Is this more work for me? How do you want brands to connect with you? What's the most effective way? Is it, do they blindly send things? Do they cold call? I'm curious about how these partnerships actually happen. It's a very practical question.
Well, it's interesting, and like for instance, something that I would talk about a lot was that I swear up and down, and this is a not paid promotion. I love the Origins charcoal mask, and I always talk about it all the time in interviews and articles. And so they reached out to me, and so I just felt that I wanted to keep, for me personally, in that case, I wanted to keep it more authentic because I really do believe in this product, that I did not want to do a paid endorsement, but I have continued to speak about that product. So I think it depends on the product in which what you're being approached with. I kind of had a similar, struggle as you were describing earlier of just like, well, how do I deal with this? So I just prefer, to kind of activate on it unpaid.
Leandra? Should we go together?
You can go first.
I always like when brands don't treat me like I'm an influencer, or I've been blogging for a little while, so not as long as you. But I was blogging, and I remember when I started out first as a blogger before I was on Instagram, I got kind of coupled together with journalists. I'm sure you did in the beginning as well. Mm-hmm. And people didn't know how to talk to me, and I was not a journalist. So, it was a little bit challenging. I think it's really important to talk to people like they're people, not they're just like their marketing machines. Really engage with them, understand what they like, what they don't like, their birthdays, those things. I think that's really important. I feel like that's what makes like a difference for me, when people actually really care. I think that
feel some humanity from the other end.
Yeah, I want to feel like I'm a human, and not that I'm just like a marketing machine.
Instead of throwing you an enormous box of product,
right? I actually
review all of it. If they hear what you like, that's
Has it ever worked when people just send you things? Because I get this question from publicists all the time. Like, should
totally.
we send them something? Does that work, or does it go into this? I'm sure it's different for each of you. But Leandra, you look like you're ready to chat.
Let me tell you. There is a beauty publicist in New York who sends all of the new brands that she starts working with as they come out. And about 2 years ago, she sent me a pile of this product by a brand called Drunk Elephant. And I was like, this branding is funny, it's neon. So I took it home and I tried the product and I really liked it. And then my husband started using it and like 3 months passed and I was like, I really like this product. So I reached out to the publicist and asked her if she could connect me to the founder. And she did. And then I asked her if she was taking on investment and if she would allow me to come in as a partner. And it just so happened that she was working with a big, or sort of like about to get in bed with a big private equity firm. And she allowed me to come in as a side investor. And that is like the happiest accident that's ever occurred.
She had a good publicist.
Or I really like the product. So my point is that yes, it absolutely works.
Okay, so send product. Okay. Good to know.
Send a note too. I feel like send product with a note.
Yes, right. I really thought you would like this.
Do you like that personal touch, or does it feel like I know what I cover?
A handwritten note, I think, is really important. Like real communication, kind of old school a little
That
bit.
humanity thing.
It does make a difference. It makes a difference.
So what was the tipping point for when you came about it a different way? I mean, I don't know how many people say, I'm going to be an influencer, and they set up the Instagram account and start doing that. You all came about it in a really authentic way, but what was that moment where you realized that this is a brand? That this can be more than just, getting a ton of followers. It's maybe some ads.
Again, for me and just for my accounts across all my different social platforms, initially when I joined, it was really just to have an honest discussion. And this was actually even pre-Instagram, just on Twitter. On Mondays and Thursdays, I wanted to have a thoughtful Thursday quote. This is before everyone decided, post a quote, it gets the most retweet posts. You know what I mean? These were just authentic.
Is that true?
Yeah, well, now people say, I'll just throw a quote out there and that's it. But I think, and I do it less now than I did at the time. It was just kind of part of my daily ritual in the morning, my own reading, my own kind of spiritual practice, so to speak, and grounding myself for the day. So that kind of opened up an audience, and people knew me from various television shows. But before that, I worked in the industry as a makeup artist and with celebrities and worked for all the big magazines like yours. And so for me, I've just slowly been creeping towards and trying to keep a balance of the beauty dialogue and my own brand mixed in my account with just my honest conversation.
I need you to re-ask the question. I was trying so hard to pull it from his answer.
So what was the moment you realized, okay, Man Repeller, blog first, could become something bigger? And I think you hinted on it before when you saw the community, but was there a tipping point where you said, okay, I'm going to make this my business?
Yeah, I think when I realized that it was important, that it needed to outlive me. I had a conversation with my mom when I started trying to get pregnant, and she said something to the effect of, I had my first child when I was 23, and Dad was also 23, so he was still like a boy, essentially, and I felt so alone while I was pregnant, and I was huge, and no one was telling me that I was beautiful or that it was okay that I felt this way, and I really needed Man Repeller, and there was nothing like it, and that really struck a chord with me, and I was like, Man Repeller is not for me. This isn't just a soapbox for me to share my opinions. This is a place where women can actually come and feel understood and like they're not alone. And that was the point at which I recognized that I was sitting on something much bigger than myself. It probably took my acknowledging, because I went to school for journalism and wanted to be a journalist, it took my acknowledging that we're not an unbiased property, that this isn't a journalistic endeavor. It is a content site that leans in specific directions, and most of the writing is expositional and creative, and therefore, my point is just that I was like swaying in both directions for a little while, and that made figuring out what we were and working towards that a little bit more challenging.
How many years into doing Man Repeller did you have that realization that this is something bigger?
2, 3?
I think for myself, I actually remember when I was in university and I was in school, and I remember I was a total nerd when I was in university. Who would have thought, right? But I remember just being at this conference. It was a nerd convention. I was at it, and all they were talking about was like, you need to be your own brand. You need to be your own brand. And I remember just I was sitting in the front and I was just soaking it in. And I remember when I first started my blog. Originally, it was called The Beauty 411, and there was somebody with a similar name, and she was like, oh, you have to change your name. And I was like, gosh, what should I change it to? I really feel like I want people to know I'm the person behind the blog, because there's a lot of names sometimes, like such as yourself, where people kind of put themselves not in the forefront, which I think is actually great now, because I'm too in the forefront. But I knew in the beginning, like I was like, I want to put my name there, and I want people to know who does it. I want people to know whose ideas it are. So when I started the blog, I made it Huda Beauty. And then when we did the packaging, I was like, gosh, I feel like it'd be really cool if I saw it on Instagram and I saw somebody's like vanity just like covered in little eyes. I think it'd be really cool. So I ended up putting my eyes on the packaging, and since then, obviously, we've kind of done that for a lot of our things. But that's kind of, I think from the very beginning, I was like, I feel like you need to be your own brand. And I think actually the most successful companies are the companies that really take that in. And not just related to beauty. I mean, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, these are people who, you love their brand, but you also know who's the person behind it. You kind of understand the way they think. You kind of understand, the way they dress. You know, like a lot about them, and you can kind of really get just lost in the brand. And I feel like that's very powerful. So I feel like when people kind of can understand that from the very beginning, it doesn't matter if you have a following or not. It doesn't matter what your hobbies are. But if you can understand that you are a brand, I feel like you can start that right away.
So that's a nice segue to my last question before I open it up for Q&A.
I just want to point out that my former camp counselor is in the audience. I just caught him in It was so weird.
Hi. We just have a question for you. You said being your own brand, how many followers you have, this is sort of advice anyone can take, but let's just talk about micro-influencers for a second. First of all, how do you define a micro-influencer? Because I've heard everything, from like 10 followers to you need to start with 1 million. And what role do they have now? You guys are beyond that, but looking, from your perspective, how important is this? Where is this going?
So my understanding of a micro-influencer is an influencer who has 10,000 or less followers.
Okay.
That's the definition that I've heard. I would say that it's an incredibly important role, because that is a very, very dedicated audience. Those people are there with genuine purpose, which is not to say that if you carry over 1 million or 2 million or however many followers, those people are not there with purpose. But that is a very, very loyal and engaged following for the most part.
Brands be paying more attention to them than they already are?
I think brands are starting to pay a lot of attention to them. If I have noticed anything over the course of the last 6 months as far as the trajectory of influencers are concerned, it's that there's a dramatic uptick in the interest of a brand to discover who's going to be the next quote-unquote influencer.
I have a very strong belief on micro-influencers because I think they are the future. And I don't think that you can put a number to it. I think it's like that. Like whoever made that definition, what is that?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's like on Wikipedia, right? But I just feel like how can you put a number to that? I think it kind of has a lot more to do with their behavior and the way they influence her. So, essentially, I personally think micro-influencers are people who influence their community. And many times they're growing to become, bigger influencers. But I think that there's no number, in my opinion. I think it has more to do with mannerisms. And I think that micro-influencers are the future. I think that's just what's going to happen.
Now.
Yeah, I feel like there's going to be so many opportunities for them to really kind of to be able to monetize in many different ways. We know some social media platforms are creating, they're working on some processes for that. But I also think that it's the future. It is totally the future.
You know what I feel like is probably a really solid and astute definition? Is if you go to someone's Instagram account and feel like what you are seeing is welcome to my show, and you're excited by it, that person is an influencer. Period.
That's the definition.
That is the exact definition.
You've lost a jewel.
Finders keepers?
I got too excited.
So I want to open this up to questions, give a few minutes. Do we have a mic for? Oh, great. Lady in the gold jacket. Oh, and she's next.
Hi, my name is Roshia. My question's for you, Huda. So you have inspired so many people, including myself.
Thank you.
And you really have changed my life. You don't even know it, but who really inspires you?
It's so funny. I met Ariana Huffington yesterday, And like it's really exciting to meet so many people. I mean, we meet so many celebrities, and I don't think I've ever really cried ever meeting anyone. And I just like started I was just like the worst experience because I couldn't talk. But she really inspired me, and I think my husband used to talk about her because when I was blogging, and she had sold her blog to AOL, it was like such a huge thing, and it was just one woman who was able to do so much with an amazing team. But it was really like a huge thing for me because I was just like, wow, like look what hard work can do. No matter how you feel at any point in time, no matter what's happening, somebody with an idea, and I remember seeing this as a quote, but like the most dangerous person is not like your competitor, it's a person with an idea. And I just thought that was so strong. So I think Ariane Huffington, amazing women, Oprah, who just like kind of like continue, like don't let anything like stop them. That is what it is. You never want to like have anything stop you. You need to be unstoppable women and men. Yeah.
Hi Huda, my name is Abiel Amor. I don't know if you remember me. We did swatches.
Oh my God, you cut your hair!
Yeah. How are you? I'm wearing full filter right now. What's up? Okay. I also want to say thank you for the quote that you gave me that day. You said it's people out there that need you to be exactly who you are. And I've been reminding myself and being a lot truer to myself with my influences.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to know you guys' thoughts. I recently read an article. I have it up here so I can quote it correctly. From CNBC, June 8th came out, and they were saying that Instagram is going to start creating longer videos, like 60 minutes, to compete with Facebook. So it's saying Instagram is targeting one of YouTube's weaknesses with plans for a long-form video. How do you feel about that, and how is that going to change the landscape of Instagram?
I've seen that.
I don't know. It seems interesting to me because you and I were just talking backstage about how the social media platforms and the requirements keep constantly changing. Like every week, it's a whole new requirement. So it's like, are people more interested in 10-second video content? Is it 30 seconds? Like people started saying a minute was too long. No one will watch the full minute. So it would be very interesting just to see how 60 minutes plays out in the format the way it exists. I would be curious to find out if the platform itself would somewhat change its navigation so that people can land and live on pages differently. I'm not quite sure.
I've actually played with it, so it's really cool. So I have experienced it. I can't say too much about it, but I know it's really cool, and I think it's very different from YouTube. I think there's going to be some ways that it's going to be kind of similar, but it's totally different. The way you use it is totally different. It's very cool.
Like YouTube, would you be able to monetize with CPM and advertising like YouTube does?
You're going to have to ask me. Okay.
I'm very excited. I'm a profoundly long-winded person, so I will probably use it for that.
So ironically, I work at Facebook and Instagram. Not going to answer that question. Thank you guys for coming here, and I wanted to know a little bit more about your personal brand, because you guys kept talking about authenticity and being honest. Is there any part of yourselves that you feel like you've had to like rein in, or maybe like shield from the public?
I like that question.
Because you're like afraid of maybe, inviting adversity or mistrust.
Your timing is interesting because I just had 2 girls 3 months ago, and it took me about 4 years to have them, and it felt like over the course of those 4 years the language that I was using to connect was a language of suffering, and I've been much happier for since I got pregnant and knew that I was going to carry to term. And I'm having a really hard time with my personal relationship with happiness and trying to reconcile whether or not I believe it has a place on social media and on the internet, because a lot of what I'm seeing with Instagram, frankly, is that the language of the app really romanticizes and celebrates victimhood in a way that could pretty severely impact how a teenager talks to herself. I'm always thinking about that 17-year-old girl who's, discovering whatever is going to help shape the way that she talks to herself during that super, super informative time. Or formative time, rather. I guess it's informative and formative. So I'm going through this right now. I think it's probably a constant struggle. I don't want to say that there's no place for happiness on social media. That's not true. Generally speaking, it just seems like the language of heartbreak is a little bit more universal than subjective happiness. But interesting timing. Let you know what comes up, if anything comes up.
And it's an interesting time. I totally feel exactly that struggling that you just described, and I'm always concerned about that younger viewer of content. And as you just said so eloquently, the discussion she's having with herself. But just kind of in our culture right now, we've reached this interesting point where people are just very much penalized for just one comment. And a lot of it, many of these comments are just abhorrent. We don't want to hear them, so therefore we kind of challenge these people. But at the same time, and a lot of the things that make the press are things that we tend to all, agree with that this shouldn't be said. Yet, one of the struggles that I have in a country where we're supposed to have free speech, we're getting to this point where we really can't in such a very public way. We're on social media right now, so we have
reactive. So gotcha.
Yeah, so you have to kind of keep your opinions to yourself. Like I learned a long time ago when Obama ran for the second run, and I dove into a political conversation on Twitter, and Cher bounced back with me, and I was like, oh wow, I've never met Cher in person. This is great. Oh my God, the hate that came towards me, and I never really experienced that before in my life. So I learned right then and there, I will never talk about my politics at all, my political opinions. I just learned I have to shut that off.
Oh, but see, this scares me because I really feel like for as necessary as outrage has been, because frankly speaking, we're living through what George Saunders predicted would become the brain-dead megaphone era. You have to be able to share your opinion, because if you don't, if you are constantly thinking about the way that it is going to be received, it will neuter that opinion to the point of unidentifiable, and new ideas will never be generated. What we're working through right now is how we express ourselves, and the words that we have to be delicate around. When outrage becomes not just the primary, but the sole way in which you're engaging on the internet is when we have a problem. And that's what we're seeing, right, is that everyone is kind of up in arms about everything all the time. Problematic, but not here to stay. It can't. It's not sustainable. And people who have large followings and are opinionated and are thoughtful enough to think through how they're projecting that opinion, I feel have a responsibility to continue to share whatever they feel.
But there are different ways you can engage and support your political beliefs without engaging into this kind of attack, kind of rhetoric that comes thrown at you. So for me, I just found a different way to show my support when I vote or what have you, as opposed to engaging in these conversations that are purely attack-based. That's where I kind of just censor myself.
The challenge part of being out there. We have to wrap up soon, but Huda, do you have any?
Kind of to Leandra's and also Jay's point, I feel like as influencers, we have a responsibility. So I feel like, I've also kind of gone through this struggle as well. Like, this is hard. It's like being an influencer, having a brand, being a mother, it's really challenging to do all of those things. And I actually said this yesterday when I was speaking at an event, and I said to my daughter all the time, I'm like, do you want me to quit and just be Nora's mom, or can I be Huda Beauty? What do you want me to do? And she always says, no, I want you to be Huda Beauty. And I feel that because I have a daughter, because I have children, because I care about kids or the future. It doesn't matter, how it happens. But I care about what is shaping the world. And, there's been times where I'm like, gosh, this is so hard. There's a lot to do. But I always think about, I want to be able to have an influence on the future because I care about the future. And that to me is kind of when something becomes more bigger than you. That's what happens when something is not about you, not about your brand, not about your financial gain. It's about the future. And that's what I think, whether it's politics or whatever, it's not politics.
You're all using your
personal well-being.
Something bigger.
Right. It's about just having the opportunity to try to make the future a better place. And influence is really important for that.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for being so thoughtful, working with everyone. Thank you.